Welcome to MyLife, Chassidus Applied, episode 20. Being that we're in a few weeks before Gimmel Tammuz, the questions have been accelerating about this day. How do we prepare for it? How do we honor it? What does it mean? Our relationship with the Rebbe, 20 years since Gimmel Tammuz Tafshin Nun Daled. So I will be addressing this topic in a more accelerated fashion, more amplified fashion in the coming weeks. As a matter of fact, in a few weeks from now, we'll actually dedicate an entire special edition to Gimmel Tammuz, to the Rebbe, in connecting. But I want to reiterate and elaborate a little more on something I said in the last episodes, and that is when people ask, what is the best way to honor this day? So I'm not getting now into the mysteries and the unknowns of what Gimmel Tammuz is exactly. That's speculation. Some people may have these thoughts, other thoughts. But one thing we know for sure, to connect to the Rebbe is to connect to his Torah. The Rebbe himself says so often about the Frierdiker Rebbe, about the Rebbe Rashab, about the Alter Rebbe, about all the Rabbeim, and in general about every tzaddik. Tzaddikim deimim lebeiram. Tzaddikim are similar to the Creator. And just like the Beirei Elam, the Creator, the Rebbeinu Shalom, God, Anon nafshis ksovis yehavis, Anoichi, that we just read on Shavuos, and we just recreated on Shavuos, Matan Torah. Anoichi, the first word in the Ten Commandments, is an acronym of Anon nafshis ksovis yehavis. I have engraved my soul in these words. That's what Hashem says. Elokus, godliness, is engraved in these words, the Torah. So too tzaddikim engrave their souls in the Torah. So the closest way, someone says, what should I read? Which book should I read? The best book is the Rebbe's own words. We, thank God, have a lot of it. And that's the closest and best way to connect. And that is a given. That's a definite correct thing to do, connected to Gimmel Tammuz, because it's connecting to the Rebbe in the deepest possible way. Everything else may be helpful, a story here, a story there, but the most important thing, if you want the etzem, the nefesh, it's ksovis yehavis. It's in the words. And that's the best and possible way to connect to the Rebbe. I want to add one more point in this. Being, and this is an answer to many of the questions that I've been receiving, how should we prepare, what should we do, etc. Yud Shvat Tovshin Chai, 1958, the Rebbe said, why is a histalkus called a Yom Hilula of a tzaddik? Yom Hilula is also a word for a wedding. Hilula, as a wedding. So he says, because a wedding and a histalkus have one thing in common. They both reflect and capture the nitzchias, the eternity of the people involved. A wedding, of course, binyan adayar, an eternal edifice that produces fruit, children, and children produce more children. It's an eternal way of perpetuating the legacy of a couple. That's what a chassan is. Koyach ein sof in Lashon of Chassidus is the birth of children, is the koyach ein sof, is the infinite power, is the only thing we have the power to create, and create something that's perpetual, that never ends. The same thing is in Histalkus, he says that the Hilula is the nitzchis of the tzaddik is then expressed. Because when the tzaddik, you see him physically, and you see his flesh and blood, so then it's this presence that's affecting. You want to really see the test of eternity is when you don't begashmius, at least to our physical eyes and fleshy eyes, see him, and you capture the eternity by what we do when he's physically not in your presence. So really, this is a challenge to us all. The eternity of the Rebbe is on the line. That's how we should see these days. And how we recreate, how we live, how we integrate, internalize, and become the mouthpieces and the living arms and legs of the Rebbe's teachings, Anon Nafshis Shavis, is the way that expresses the eternity of the Rebbe. So it's now in our hands. Kavyachol. What means in our hands? Because in this physical world, we are now the people. Are we going to celebrate and demonstrate the eternal legacy, the eternal teachings, the eternal wisdom, the eternal living leadership power in the Rebbe's words, or not? God forbid. This is our challenge. So it's very clear what we need to do. As long as there's 7 billion people on this planet that are not aware of the Rebbe, of Chassidus, of Yefutze Meinesecha Chutza, we've not done our job. It has to be a household name. That is the ultimate nitzchis and celebration of the nitzchis, eternity. And this is something that we can do now more than ever before. And something in our hands. Because if we don't do it, it doesn't happen on its own. So this is in brief. We will talk more about this in the coming weeks. We actually will launch the Meaningful Life Center will unveil a campaign that I think can make everyone help us all share the Rebbe. But each of us can do it already in our own way, in our own fashion. As I said, we'll have a special edition discussing this in the coming weeks. There's been much feedback in the previous episodes about shlichus. What does it mean to be connected to the Rebbe today? What the Rebbe wants of us. Obviously, most of it is very positive and very reinforcing and encouraging. And as always, there's always more questions and even challenges, and I don't know about rebuttals, but definitely different opinions on the matter. So let me read a little feedback and try to address it, as well as cover some new topics in this episode 20. I want to reiterate also what I mentioned. If you want to submit questions, it's at meaningfullife.com/MyLifeLive. I want to also specifically mention, since some of you have written to me, but it's anonymous because it's a forum that you can read. You can pose questions, and I have no idea who it is writing. Some of you have written about wanting to make a personal appointment and talk to me personally. I can't respond to you in that context, so please write to me at Simon, S-I-M-O-N, at meaningfullife.com. It's completely confidential, going directly to me personally, my email box, and we can then schedule either a talk on the phone or a personal meeting. I'm saying it simply because I have no other way to communicate to those that have written those questions. And as always, every question is welcome. Nothing is off limits, and hopefully we can continue and address them in the best possible way based on Chassidus and the Rebbe's words, etc. So in context of the discussions about shlichus, what is the mission of our times? What does it mean to be connected to the Rebbe? And I reiterate again, I'm not talking about being a fine Jew. A fine Jew, there's a Shulchan Aruch, there's halacha, there's Torah mitzvahs, there's Torah Veidim Milos Chasadim, and so on. We're talking about specifically Hiskashrus, a connection to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe's calling to us, has specific requirements. And it doesn't come just by birthright. It comes through a choice made, an effort made. The Rebbe expects certain things. Now, the Rebbe is a leader of our generation, so the truth is it's a message and it's the mission of the seventh generation of all people. I would say 7 billion people on this earth. However, those that had the schus and merit to hear it directly from the Rebbe, or on his proximity, the Dal Damas, and went to the yeshivas, and to the environment, and to the organizations and institutions that are infused with the Rebbe's spirit, and the spirit of Chassidus, there are specific expectations that since you were exposed to it, to know what is your calling. And I reiterate again, the point is basically, the Rebbe said, Deira Shvi, we have a special mission. A special mission is not just to take care of our own needs. So first of all, no soul comes down here just to take care of its own needs. But it's specifically spelled out. We are all meant to be shluchim and shluchis. How it manifests, I described in different ways. So here's some comments that people wrote in response. I will say right at the outset, some of these comments, it seems either didn't hear what I said entirely, or only partially, or half, or quarter. It's important before you write a comment, and I'm still read the comments, that at least give equal time to hear what I've said, because I believe I qualified many different things that are being asked here. But since the questions are still coming in, clearly some people either misunderstood or needs to be spelled out further, and I will address that right now. So first question, teacher second class? Firstly, if possible, it would be quite useful if the sources you bring can be included in the next week's brief about your episode on the different websites. Well, I read many of the sources. Some of them I actually say what page and site, chapter and verse. Right now, I don't have yet the resources. If somebody wants to help offer and sponsor someone who can find the sources and actually put them up, I'd be happy to do it. But I'm doing the best we can under the circumstances. Obviously, there's a lot more that can be done with this whole program. But for more to be done, the truth is, frankly, in Kemach ein Teire, you need to have support. So I challenge you in return to help us out to be able to do this. I didn't do this on condition that anyone be paid, but more work that needs to be done, staff need to be paid for such a thing. So yes, I'm happy to create the sources and publish them, but I'd also appreciate if people would help pitch in on that. Secondly, although my children have no problem about feeling that they're doing the right thing and being a chinuch, I feel you didn't encourage those who express their doubts whether they are second class to shluchim. From the 4,000 shluchim, many are exactly that, teachers. Yes, you did say that spreading Torah is part of the shlichus, but I feel that these teachers needed more encouragement, validation, that what could be more valuable than spreading, teaching Torah. Enjoying your episodes immensely, very grateful. Okay, good. Another questioner writes, being a shliach versus anything else. I'm sorry, but there are so many letters where the Rebbe talks about other jobs except for being a shliach. Why is chinuch even a second option? In order to create a generation of shulchan, which is the mitzvahs hadar, as you quoted the Rebbe, then you need teachers to teach that generation. Why is chinuch to our own the second option? Shliach is being the foremost. Open up the Igros and you'll see countless letters of the Rebbe about chinuch with our own people or shlichus among our own community. Okay. Question number 3. With respect, I thought you could encourage to those who go into business by reminding them the Hayom Yom, 4th of Nisan and the 16th of Iyar. That states the advantage of a businessman over B'nai Torah, as they have the chance to reach many people who could not be reached by those who don't enter the marketplace. Okay, let's address these 3. The first 2 are basically the same category about chinuch and so on. So I made it very, very clear. First of all, let's start from scratch. Many have asked me, I didn't read it right now, that they had a specific directive from the Rebbe to go into business or to do something else. Look, I am not here, God forbid, to challenge or question or overrule what someone gave the Rebbe gives someone a direct Torah. If you feel the Rebbe gave you a direct Torah in clear terms, unambiguously, so if he told you to go stand on a roof the rest of your life, or to chop wood, lach tevetzim, or to be a wagon driver, or to go into business, that's your Torah, that's your shlichus. That's very clear. I did not come to, God forbid, in any way question that. I will say, if you don't have such a directive, and I know most don't have directives like that very, very clearly, you want to know what the Rebbe wants of you, you're a bocher, a young man or young woman, so there, you look in the sichos, you look in the mamorim, we have hundreds and hundreds of them, what the Rebbe said he wants. That's what I was addressing. So I want to start with that. Secondly, I want to say, and with everyone's due respect to everybody, sometimes we hear what we want to hear from the Rebbe, and later, listen, we have our own guilt, we have our own way of thinking, and many people, the Rebbe himself says, you want haskama or you want my eitzah? So many people wanted to go into business, and then, we pushed it. The Rebbe gave you a bracha. The Rebbe is not going to be menei about and not hold up his brachas. And this is well known, the number of times the Rebbe said, you wanted it, so I give you a bracha. You want to know what I want you to do? The Rebbe once actually told somebody, Yechidus, you want a blessing for what you want to do, or you want to know what I want you to do? So everyone has to look in their own heart and soul, and it's very nice. We all are negei b'davar, including myself. So we're always looking for ways to justify our positions. If you have a clear directive and you can sleep peacefully with your conscience and you know that you didn't fit the Rebbe into your needs and and tailor it to your perspective, then who's to challenge you? And at the end of the day, it's our own integrity and honesty. However, I will say, overall, you see pretty much clear directives from the Rebbe regarding this. But at the same time, to quote this person, let's take a read the Hayom Yom. If you look at 16th of Iyar and Daled Nisan, basically the Rebbe speaks in 16th of Iyar especially, he talks about the Chassid of Elia Abeler, was a simple man. My grandfather said to him, the Frierdiker Rebbe said, my grandfather would be the Rebbe Marash, Elia, I envy you. You travel to various fairs, you meet many people, sometimes in the middle of a business transaction you get into a warm discussion about a Jewish saying, something from Ein Yankov, and you arouse the other person studying Nigla or Chassidus. This causes Gvaldik Simcha above. The Eibishter rewards such trade with the blessing of children, health, and sustenance. The larger the fair, the more work there is, and greater is the livelihood earned. And then there's the same similar idea in Daled Nisan, you can look up in Hayom Yom. So first of all, obviously all this goes without saying that the Frierdiker Rebbe says it. The question would be, how is it in our generation? Obviously, these are forms of shlichus. I mentioned it. That someone once they're in business already, and they should definitely use it as much as possible for spreading Torah and Yiddishkeit. If a person could have that type of presence of mind 24/7 in business, not see money and profit as the primary function, but completely see it as a springboard to bring God into the world, and not just words, but actually that's how they see their mission, then that is a shlichus. However, it's far more difficult to do that when you're in the workplace and you have to be focused on and prioritize about profits and so on, as I discussed. And then I also spoke about initially how you ought to be before you are already in that situation. And again, I apologize if anybody feels they're criticizing where you made your choices. You made your choices, do the best what you can. But let's be honest, we have to know what the Rebbe standards are. And to compromise the Rebbe standards because it doesn't make someone comfortable, I don't know if that's exactly what Chassidus demands of us. We all have our flaws, but let's not make our flaws and justify them just because it makes us more comfortable. Now, I would say that this is the Frierdiker Rebbe's words. In this generation, the emphasis is even more on the shlichus part, even more than just going into business and recognizing hashgacha pratis or talking to people, because there's a demand of the Rebbe, especially in the last generation, to finish the last job, and Mashiach is on the threshold. You really believe that? And the question is, what are you doing about it? How are you doing that? And what makes you uniquely a Chabad Chassid in that sense? Let's now go over to the chinuch discussion. The first two questions. I mentioned the Rebbe spoke to that, told that mechanech that if he does with mesida unesina, it's like shlichus. Chinuch of boys, of children, of the boys or girls, is the greatest thing a person can do. There's no question about it. So why didn't the people who went and built Chabad houses, why didn't they just simply become teachers? Because it's very clear from the Rebbe as well, that as much as chinuch is important, there's different levels of chinuch. There's chinuch of going into communities where there are no Jews, no education at all, where there are Jews but they have no awareness at all. Does that negate the importance of someone going into our own meisdus? I do not think it negates it. As I said in the Sefer HaShlichus, the teachers are there. However, there's no question there's a bigger Mesiras Nefesh, and it seems a bigger emphasis of the Rebbe to go out and reach those that have no Tinei Kishanishbu. There's something special about that. And something special about that Mesiras Nefesh. If every Shliach and Shlucha today would have just gone to Chinuch, and our Mesiras Chinuch would have all these Shluchim and Shluchas, and not gone out to the world, in different places, I don't know if that would be fulfilling the Rebbe's Shlichus. I'm not here to start weighing the rewards and the level of a person's commitment. I think if his commitment is there completely, if it's an area of chinuch and helping others, serving others, it goes in the general category of shlichus. To start measuring first class, second class, that whole language does not speak to me. I've never heard such a language. I never heard the Rebbe say there's first class chassidim, second class chassidim. The Alter Rebbe had a cheder rishon and a cheder sheni based on people's aptitude and people's knowledge. The Rebbe never made such a condition. So to start talking first class, second class is more human terms, that people want to feel and pull rank, that they think they're superior to others. That's their business. I don't think it has anything to do with Chassidus. It has to do with insecurity and self-aggrandizement. It's not the derech of bittul of Chassidim. The biggest Chassidim are the most bottle and don't go around saying, I'm first class, you're second class. However, not talking about people, you look at the Rebbe's standards, it's very clear. He wants a person to go and give his whole life to being in the army that the Rebbe set up, and changing the world. There's nothing to talk about. That's not going to change because some people are not comfortable with it. That's the Rebbe's again and again and again. And I'm not saying my own words. Read the sichos I cited a few weeks ago. Read even more sichos. Listen to them. And listen objectively. Put yourself aside and see, what does the Rebbe want? So when a guy or a girl are 17, 18 years old, they listen with clear open ears and objectively because they haven't yet made life choices. The fact we've all made life choices as once you're older. So obviously you're going to hear it somewhat slanted. But you have to be animaspal ledaze hatinuk. Be like a child. Listen to the Rebbe and teach your children what the Rebbe says. And we're not here to knock ourselves. If you feel that what you've chosen in your life is not up to par, so change it if you're able to. But to start making our comfort zones and fit the Rebbe into our comfort zones, I think is a travesty, to be very honest. And it's false. So I know parents who tell their children, listen, I didn't go on shlichus, but you know something? You should go, and I didn't do the right thing. And there are other parents who say, no, I always did what the Rebbe said, and try to justify. I think it comes down to someone who really knows what the Rebbe said, and someone who wants to be right, to feel comfortable, and so on. And the rest speaks for itself. The Rebbe's on the record. We don't need to have hearsay. This isn't like one maskiris, one secretary overheard the Rebbe say something once. This is in hundreds of sichos again and again, and it only gets stronger and stronger the more you read. So read on your own. You don't need me to tell you. But don't start fitting the Rebbe into your own comfort zone. Read what the Rebbe says and then discuss it. Read Shmini Tov Shen Chai, as I quoted, and see what the Rebbe says there and see how you fit into that sicha, instead of trying to fit the sicha into you. Okay, so I don't believe in any second class. I think chinuch is up there. I see no reason why chinuch is not at the top of the line. The fact that many people find it more glamorous to go maybe a more distant land, yeah, there may be more challenges in that way. It's harder to work with our own communities. But I could see a person in Crown Heights, or in Kfar Chabad, or in London, or in Paris, who's working with our own children, meaning with own Chabad children, and with doing it with Mesirah and Nesina, with love, and bringing them passion and connection to the Rebbe, absolute shlichus. If it's a mechanech that's barely doing the job and behaving like it's like some type of burden, and so on, then that's another story. I think enough said about that. Let's move to the next. The next question was about Avodas hatefillah. I spoke about prayer. So here's the question. Thank you very much for addressing this subject again. You explained that the key is that after learning some Chassidus, one should endeavor to become excited about neshama matters and elokus matters, godliness matters. Rabbi Jacobson, please explain this critical component. How does one get excited about neshama matters and godly matters? Beyond the feeling of having understood what was studied, where does personal excitement about the levels one has studied come from? Please explain the steps, beginning with learning a piece of Chassidus before davening that one takes to make this happen. What does this emotional work look like? Please be specific enough so that we can apply this. Chassidus Applied. Right? B, that was A. You mentioned eliciting Ava and Yira. I don't know what that is. In Tanya Perek Gimmel, the Alter Rebbe warns about Dimyenis Shov, which means illusions, empty illusions, even for the one who is intensely working at it. And I'm not sure I know what Ava and Yira means to a regular person like me. Am I even shaykh to it? Does it have even a relationship with me? C, let us suppose I learn about the difference between Seviv and Mamala. What do I do with that while I'm davening? Let us suppose I'm learning about the Kav. What do I do with that while davening? Frankly, I don't even know how learning about the Kav is to be personalized at all. At least when learning about the four elements I have over the years, post-yeshiva developed some understanding how this is reflected in the Keiches HaNefesh. Once you go beyond that, I have no idea how to personalize it, and surely not how to daven with it. I eagerly await your shurim each week, and count myself among all those who don't know how to adequately express their appreciation for your servicing our thirsty souls. Okay. Excellent questions. And I don't know if I can cover it all, but this has been really one of the fundamental undercurrents of MyLife Chassidus Applied, is really taking Chassidish ideas and personalizing them. So let's start with this. The Kav, Mamala Seviv, all these words, these cryptic words, unless you personalize them, yes, they will not have any impact on you, especially in davening, especially in any way emotionally, because they remain academic concepts. You have to understand Kav, Seviv, Mamala as forces. Think of them as different elements of your own DNA, of your own building blocks, your own cellular structure, that without it, you can't function properly. If you can explain that to yourself when you're learning those mamorim, those ideas, that will make the davening come alive. So I'm going to address B and C all in one. I believe I did this in very early episodes, but it doesn't hurt to do it again. Mamala and Seviv briefly, and I'm right now going to strip them of their Hebrew words, is essentially the structure and beyond structure. Mamala Kalaman is elokus, that tutzachon, is mislabish and elmas. Think of it, of the faculties in the human being, is the keiches hanefesh, the faculties that manifest in your actual containers. Eira is bekalim, the power of vision in your eyes, the power of hearing in your ears, the power of speech in your mouth, the power of writing in your hands. The brain is in the mind, the emotions in the heart. They're localized functions. This is the structure. It consists of an energy and a container. An energy is a faculty, and a container is the limb or the organ that corresponds respectively to that particular faculty. Clear. Seviv Kalalman is not just talking some type of surrounding thing, as he says in Tanya Perek Memches 48, chapter 48. Seviv Kalalman, let's call it transcendent energy, as opposed to immanent energy, Mamal. Transcendent energy is, think of it like a hovering force. Transcendent means it's not localized. It's in let's talk about in terms of, let's say, when a teacher is teaching a class. So what the students understand is Mamala Kalam. That's internalized, integrated, immanent. What the students remains above their head, that remains elusive, that's Seviv Kalam, relatively speaking. Just as an example. In terms of transcendence, when you stand in front of some awesome sight of nature, or you have an experience, you see the birth of a child, or you think of something that, life itself, the mystery of life, it evokes awe. awe. Why? Because it's something beyond you. It's overwhelming. It's a transcendent experience. When you experience something that makes sense to you, internalized, that's and evokes an element of love and intimacy. Ava and Yira is basically love and awe. In every relationship between spouses, there's an element of love, which is the intimacy, the closeness. They relate to each other, the affection. These things are tangible in the sense that they're containable. When you talk about the respect one has for another, that you see the mystique of your spouse, you see something about them that you don't quite get, that evokes an element of awe, an element of yira. Yira should not be confused with fear, like being frightened of a thief. Yira is a sense of awe in the presence of something greater than you are. But Zohar Ampin, in a microcosmic form, we have it in our own relationships, that every relationship needs space between the two and needs closeness. Closeness is ava, space is distance. When we learn Chassidus about Seviv Mala, we're learning that there's a God that gives you life, and you thank Him, like we say in the Birchas HaShachar. Thank you for giving me Malbish Arumim, Pekeach Ivrim, giving us sight, dressing us, giving us life, giving us sustenance, like we say in benching. That's Mamala Kalam. That's the God that you relate to, that you can say, I thank you for giving me the power to breathe, the power to be born, etc., etc. Then there's an element where you'd say to the divine that is beyond you. You realize that God is more than just what He gives you. He's not just chayecha, your sustenance. It's a God that's beyond that. So God is not just nature. It's not just hu mekayme shalelam, but esa ena elam mekayme. You realize that there's an element of God that's beyond you. And that's a form that evokes transcendence, that evokes bittul, that evokes going outside of your system. So in human terms, there's how we relate to God, how we connect to God, how He relates to us, and there's connecting to God, how He's beyond us. This is two fundamental principles in Chassidus that becomes applied when you daven. These are supposed to evoke these two feelings. So you go away feeling that both God is sustaining you, but there's also God that's beyond you. That's one way of explaining it. The kav, by the way, is a form of mamala kalamin. Without going into the distinction, the kav is a force, like the tailor needle that he uses to weave a tapestry. That's what the kav is. It's a thin line, thin ray of light that creates mamala kalam. That's mamala, creates pnimi. It creates yesher, in the language of Kabbalah, gulim and yesher. So that's one way of applying it. There are many ways to apply this further. And when it comes to davening, I said then, tafasta merubah tafasta, don't grab it all, step by step, meaning take one davening, one tefillah, focus on it, personalize it, let it excite and awaken you. Now, we're excited and awakened, by what? By gashmis. Money, covet, power. You feel you want something, you bought a house, you bought a toy, you bought a gift, you gave somebody something, you fall in love, you get married, you marry off a child, all beautiful things. Davening is meant to help us, and Chassidus is meant to help us get excited by one more thing called godliness. So you could say, how could you compare the two? Well, godliness is about understanding that there's a deeper truth to things, a deeper reality. And connecting to that becomes as exciting as connecting to your needs. That's in a very brief and simple way to put it that way. How do you ignite that spark? I don't know if this medium here on the video, on being broadcast on YouTube or on the different sites is the best way to do this. You need to sit down with a Mashpia who knows you well and customize and tailor to you how each of us has to begin to be excited a little about Elokus. Now, some people get excited about the Rebbe's inyanim. That's being excited by Elokus, because the Rebbe is representing what God wants for us in this world. That's what means Hiskashrus, that means Shlichus, and so on. Just another way of being excited about Elokus. Except it's easier because the Rebbe said, go amiftzayim, go do this thing, go do that thing, teach, learn Chassidus, teach Chassidus. But it's about being excited about something. Now, of course, with the Rebbe makes it easier. But at the end of the day, it's about being excited, not about your needs and about your survival and about your family, which is all beautiful, but about what does God want of you. And this every one of us needs the right words that will touch us to get us out of our comfort zone to be excited about that. More than that, I said I'd like rather that people actually go and speak to their mashpiim and so on. Which leads us into the question about mashpia, since we're already on topic. Mashpia. How do you find a mashpia? So I go back to earlier episodes, were discussed, so this is complementing what was said back then. The Rebbe coming out about Mashpia, first of all, Aseh L'charav is a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. The idea that you should have the Kohen Asher B'Yamecha, you should go to the Kohen, the priest, the wise person of your times, is Psukim Mechumish. Moshe Rabbeinu, for counsel, for advice, for soul mentoring, etc. But in our contemporary times, Yutes Kislev Tavshel Lamed Zayin is when the Rebbe came out formally about the concept of Mashpim, that every community and every individual and so on. So I refer everyone to read that sikha again. Yutes Kislev Tavshel Lamed Zayin. That would be the end of 1976, Yutes Kislev. It's the same Farbrengen where the Rebbe then announced that he was going to be publishing Ayin Beis, the sikha before that. And maybe it's not disconnected. He speaks there clearly that Mashpim is a major element in what Chassidus came to accomplish in this world. The Rebbe starts the sikha actually then. So Yutes Kislev, davon doch fortepestan for Chassidus. Yutes Kislev, and we have to, after all, do something for Chassidus. And he goes into the whole discussion of Mashpim, which continued in the Farbrengens afterwards, Rosh Chodesh Shvat, Yud Shvat, Tu B'Shvat, and continued that not just for men, but also for women. You see a comprehensive miftzah, comprehensive campaign to establish mentors. And the Rebbe made it very clear there that Mashpim does not mean necessarily this big global Mashpia, this communal Mashpia. Even if one individual can help one person, be there for them. He actually said everyone who thinks they can help in some way mentoring someone should do it. And we'll see. It's not a lifetime contract, the Rebbe said. If Sigelungen means you're successful and people respond to you, by all means. So I want to say again, reiterate, you want to do something the Rebbe wants, especially coming toward Gimmel Tammuz, become a Mashpia to somebody. You could say, I have nothing to say. You always have something. I mentioned the story of a woman who was hearing that her neighbors, her upstairs tenant or downstairs tenant, I'm not sure, were having their spats. And she didn't know whether she should get involved, so she decided in an idle way to tell the woman, listen, if you want to talk to someone, I'm available. She ended up saving her life, not physically, but having someone to talk to. She may be that tenant, landlord, may be the only mushpa that she has, the only one she's a mashpia is this person. That's completely fulfilling the Rebbe's directive. It means caring. Obviously not meddling, but caring about somebody, and you can become their friend. You become their advisor, their counsel, whatever shape it takes on. Because Mashpia is a little lesser intense and authoritative than a Rav. It was Devorim, Tovshim Memvov, when the Rebbe started Aseh L'charav in that very powerful way. But regardless, it can be, Mashpia is more like, it could be a combination of Knei L'chachaver, Yoyetzayech, and Sheftayech, as the Rebbe explains in Sheftim Nun Aleph, is the difference between authority and advice. But regardless, each of us has to offer. Now, how do you find a mashpia? Let's go the other way around. I think the way to do it is really friend by friend. There are criteria. The person you have to be able to relate to that person. If you're going to speak to someone just because you need a mashpia and you can't relate to that person, you don't feel comfortable sharing with them your life, you don't feel they understand you, I don't see how that's going to work. Maybe it's for temporary, it may work to at least get some advice because you need someone to give you some objective advice. It's critical to find someone you trust. Now, of course, the big question is, what happens if you don't find anyone you can trust? So I reiterate, if the Rebbe said this directive, there's no question it's possible to be fulfilled. You have to look, you have to keep looking. And you find, I think it's best always to look for places that are not where everybody looks. You have to find people close to you. It could be even relatives. It can be people that you meet every day. Someone you can just have a conversation with. I would add criteria to that would be, besides trusting them, of course, and seeing that they care, a measure of humility, a measure of knowing what the Rebbe wants. What you want to feel when you speak to that person is not that they're the smart, the know-it-all, and a smart aleck who knows everything, but someone who says, what would the Rebbe say in this situation? They may humbly go and look it up in Igres or in Farbrengens, ask others. You need to feel that you're dealing not with a person, but someone who's being a channel to what the Rebbe, what Chassidus wants. When the Alter Rebbe says, and this interestingly in Yutes Kislev Lamed Zayin, when the Rebbe speaks about Mashpim, he cites the introduction to Tanya, where the Alter Rebbe says, in this sefer you'll find eitzes, advice to all questions in Avodas Hashem, and if you can't find it, go to the Gedalim Shebe'ir. As I described, my interpretation of Gedalim is mature. Godel in Halach is a mature person as opposed to Ketanim. not just chronologically a gadol, but a mature person who understands emotional issues, personal issues, can look in Tanya. But it's interesting, it's to explain Tanya. So you need someone who you see defers, not just a smart person or psychologically attuned, but defers and refers to the Rabbeim, to Chassidus, for advice. Now, recently a new letter was revealed that about psychiatry. The Rebbe speaking about psychiatry. Interesting statement there. The guy asked the Rebbe about going to a psychiatrist. So the Rebbe says, if it's going once or twice, and it's to a psychiatrist who understands your situation and your environment and your religious commitment, no, fine. But if it's going ongoing basis, the Rebbe says, you can help yourself more than any psychiatrist that can help you. Now, is this Hayra l'Rabim? You could say it is with certain circumstances. We're not talking, again, a clinical condition, a medical condition, where you need medicine, or there's, God forbid, some other things that are not just something you can work on. But there are many, many issues that we are able to work on with a Mashpia and with maybe ourselves. And the Rebbe says clearly, you can do more for yourself than any psychiatrist can do. You can check out the letter. It was publicized recently from Tafshin Yud Gimmel, 5-7-13. But to go back to the topic at hand, is Mashpia, those are the requirements I would lay out. Someone you can trust, someone you see defers and has a Chassidus look at things, and defers to that, looks where the Rebbe would say something. Someone who gets themselves out of the way, doesn't have to be the smartest person, someone that understands you and relates to you. And at the end of the day, Chavra Islay. We have to look at our friends and look to others and say, have you found someone? And if ultimately you'll see through referrals, you can ultimately find the right person. Is it going to be easy? Not always, sometimes easier than others. But if you know what you're looking for, and you have the courage that you don't have to just be pushed into it, you'll just be deliberate and take your time till you find the right person. If temporarily you need advice, look to whoever you can access at that time. But longer term, try to find someone of that caliber. And again, there's absolutely possible, because this is a directive, but it requires sometimes the effort, and sometimes being also prepared to hear and listen to a person like that. So that addresses the issue of Mashpia. I want to read a few more questions about the Mashpia thing since I'm on it, and I addressed it, but I believe I didn't address all the details. So one question writes, I don't feel like I can have a Mashpia. For many years I wanted to find one. Now that I'm a bit older, I realize why I have been so hesitant. I have generally a lot of anxieties and fears, and many times I fall deep in depression. I went to doctors and psychologists, and they don't see anything wrong with me. But I know how I feel, and I know that something isn't right. Based on my moods, my Yiddishkeit goes up and down. When I feel depressed or stressed, I can't handle being excited and up to par with Yiddishkeit. My chitas doesn't happen, my mind goes to not tznius areas, and in general, I'm not as I should be. Feel like getting a Mashpia makes no sense because I don't know what to tell them, and I won't be able to distinguish between what I think is a health problem or mental problem and what's real. I also fear that the Mashpia will just send me to a psychologist. Well, let me address that. So first of all, look, the Rebbe said everybody should have a Mashpia. Everyone should have a Selech Harav. You feel you're an exception? I have nothing to say to you. I don't agree. Every one of us needs it. You wouldn't say the same thing if you needed to go to a lawyer to buy a house, or to deal with another legal issue, or an accountant who does your taxes, or does your bookkeeping and business and so on, or any type of other consultant that you need an expert in. I don't know what you do for a living, but we all need consultants that are objective and are experienced in their particular area. So why not when it comes to personal matters? If you're talking about somebody who's just an idiot, who's just going to send you off to a psychologist and doesn't know how to address your issues, obviously that's not the right person. But every one of us needs it, and everyone else can find someone. So I would suggest that you do not give up. You fall into depression, you need someone to talk to. Maybe you've not learned the courage how to speak to someone. Again, I don't know who wrote this, and I'm definitely not judging. I'm just trying to address, and don't give up hope. I'm saying to you, look at yourself, and you must find someone to speak to. You don't want to give them the designated title Mashpia. Don't give them Mashpia. Let them be friend, advisor, consultant, part-time, temporary rather, etc., etc. But someone who's wise will know how to distinguish between a health problem, between a psychological problem, between if you need a professional. Someone who doesn't understand these things is not the right person. Question 2. Why does my Mashpia in yeshiva sound so boring, unintelligent, and closed-minded? I hear from Chabad rabbis, like you and others, who talk about marriage counseling, dealing with emotional problems and relevant issues. Why can't our Mashpiim be more practical? These are from the secrets and mysteries of existence. I can't really answer this question. If Mashpiim are not practical, then they're maybe not Mashpiim. So maybe that's the real answer. Why the people who are titled the Mashpiim giving advice that doesn't seem practical? I can't speak for others, and I don't want to criticize anybody. It's not my role. But I will say this Mashpia is not for you if it's not practical. If you're getting advice that doesn't speak to your heart and soul, that doesn't help you practically, what's the point? This isn't some Gzeiras HaKosov where God said, where the Rebbe said, go to Mashpia like, there's like Para Aduma. Mashpia is a logical thing. It's going to a person who has more objectivity, who hopefully has a knowledge of Chassidus and the Rebbe, to help you to deal with an issue, to help you get over a block, to get over a hump. You need the bitl and Kabbalah sale to listen to that person, to call out to them. A good Mashpia anyway is not going to impose themselves on you. They're going to, as much as you ask, that's what they'll respond to. So this requires finding the right one. If there's Mashpiyim that does not speak to you, whatever reason, it's not practical, find someone that is. I can't speak for the yeshiva system, the education system. We don't live in a perfect world, so we're going to have challenges in this area. But remember, we live also in a society that's free society. You choose who your Mashpia should be. Now, you're going to say in yeshiva, how could I choose? I'm given who I'm given. So the Rebbe gave an answer to a bocher who was having problems in yeshiva with his teacher, Mashpia. And he told me the story himself. And the Rebbe said to him, among other things, that the way the Alter Rebbe Rasha was miyased temchet mimim, he was miyased there should be two Mashpiim at least. Because ein deis ein shavas, bocherim have different ways of thinking, and the Mashpiim should be very different type of personalities, different type of mindsets. So bocher can then identify with one or the other. And the Rebbe said, so find a Mashpia you identify with. It means you don't have to find one. Find the one you identify with. But once you do, you have to have Kabbalah Sel and listen to him. So yeshivas, this is a clear hira how yeshivas should be set up. They shouldn't have one Mashpia. There should be at least two, and of different temperaments, of different personalities. Different Mashpiim have different ways of doing things. So the Bochum have an element of diversity. And frankly, if a Bocher cannot find in his own yeshiva Mashpiim, let him say to the official Mashpiim. If they have a little bittel and they don't feel that humiliated by this statement, and basically say that not everybody's for everybody. It's very clear. Not everyone's the best Mashpia. They could be a great Mashpia for one person and not for someone else. They should advise somebody that person may be able to identify with. This happens all the time with me. People come see me. I don't feel I'm the right fit. I don't feel that I'm the one that's going to reach to them, whatever the reason is. And I try to advise to find the right person they can speak to, just like a shidduch in a way. It has to be customized. Question number three about this topic. I appreciate so much you addressing so many pressing issues of today. As I listen to your Sunday talks, I hear you getting closer and closer to an answer. And then, the answer is to talk to your Mashpia. Oy vey. Talk to my Mashpia, I wish I had someone I used as my Mashpia for 15 years until I learned recently what she really thinks of me and my family. It just made me laugh. As we entered Shidduchim for oldest children, I guess. And now I'm on to trying to find someone else. I'm finding everyone is afraid to give advice for really important, challenging issues. Everyone gets sent to my former Mashpia. It's like this writer is very funny. It's like an ingrown toenail here, and I need a way to find someone out of town who can accept and appreciate me and not try to ruin my children's shidduchim because of their judgments about us. How does one find a Mashpia when I have to get beyond my own circles? I'd love to have an anonymous Mashpia phone line, only I know it helps for the Mashpia to know me. Any suggestions? Now, I didn't mean to laugh at, but with, very well phrased, and very humorously phrased if it wasn't so sad. What shall I say? I would say it's like this. It's like everything, fresh air. Mishana Mocha, Mishana Mazel is an expression. You change space, you change your luck. Space doesn't always mean the physical space in which you're in. Space can also mean your mindset. So if it's a Mashpia that's like an ingrown toenail, pardon the expression, and someone, as you said, when you heard what they really think of you and your family, which is tragic, not that it got back to you, that the person should even think like that. What can I say? Clearly this is not your person. And the fact that everyone keeps sending you back to that person, it means you're locked in some type of vicious cycle, a whirlpool of that you can't get out of, a vortex. So I think you have to just start completely. I don't think out of town on the phone, that can be a beginning. But if you wish to call me and you want to speak to me anonymously, I'm happy to speak to you. Email me at the email Simon, SIMON at meaningfullife.com, and I could speak and hear a little more about the situation and then maybe advise. There's always a solution. One of the fundamental methodologies and principles of the Rebbe, there's no challenge that we're given that we cannot overcome. So I have no doubt you can find the right one. I'm sad to hear that it's had such an impact, but now's the time. It's never too late. And now you can find the right person, the right type of advice. It seems to me that you yourself are trapped in the people you've already been connected with, and you almost can't, it's like the what they call the Stockholm syndrome, where you're like the battered wife syndrome, where you become attached to the people who are abusing you. I don't think this is overt abuse, but subtly, and I think you need to find a whole new set of friends, a new set of Mashpiim, without rejecting anyone. No one has to know that you're not turning to them anymore. I think there's a dependency that this maximum dependency that I don't think is necessary or healthy. Question number 4. I've been in elementary, high school, seminary, post-sem, all in different places. As such, I find it especially hard to have a set Mashpia who can help me monitor my growth. What can one do to have a Mashpia if they didn't have one up till now? What with all their situations experienced already? I feel like I'm too old and been through so much to start introducing myself to someone who's to be authoritative. It will be impossible for them to really get me with all my facets. Although I realize how important it is to have one for decision-making and personal growth. What can I do? Look, if you think you're too old, that's not a good sign. You should always feel you're too young, because you always want to be flexible and always want to grow and develop new things. The fact that you're speaking in elementary, high school, seminary, post-sem, which it means you're probably in your 20s. Imagine what you're going to feel when you're in your 40s if you think you're already too old. So please, don't think you're too old. You're young, flexible. There's plenty of options. I don't know if you have to find an authoritative person. You find someone you respect. Don't call it authority. Call it someone you respect that you can address and comment and turn to with a question. And test people. There's nothing wrong with testing. You ask a question, you test the waters. You get an answer that's a decent answer. You could ask more. You don't have to expose your whole life in 1 second. It's done in a careful way. It's like a dating process. You go, you check out a person, you see. I don't think you just point to Mashpia and everything is great. Anyone who comes to me ever for advice, I always say, listen, let's talk. If I could be of help, great. If not, we move on. There's nothing lost. And that's how the approach I would take. It'd be far more cautious and far more deliberate, and you won't have that many fears. Okay. So, I covered a whole bunch of questions here, Mashpia. There's more, actually, but I want to move to another topic because of time limits. I want to make sure I cover at least as much as I can cover. And, of course, there's always next week. So, let's talk about the question about dealing with a noisy and distracting shul. Okay, so here's the question. I am disturbed by the Gaboyim and holy daveners shooing the talkers who I do not care about. In episode 18, you hinted this was not the Avodah to repair these people. Myra McCamus, meaning they want my sources. What is someone who's disturbed by the white noise of shh supposed to do? I would appreciate the question being answered. I guess this person is talking not about the speakers, but about the people doing the shushing. Yeah, we don't know what's louder at times. The people who talk have no interest in being quiet or pursuing avodah, which is what it is, but the Gabbai resorts to shushing and newing and stopping the chazan abruptly as a mode of ineffective, immature revenge. This white noise and kindergarten congregation makes it impossible for me to daven. What would the Rebbe suggest? Please refer to sources. Okay. Then question number 2 talks about someone who's going to a shul that he grew up in. But the shul, he says, they only do is instead of learning and davening, all they do is talk about business and talk about everything that is, but anything Yiddishkeit. I found another shul, he says, that I really enjoy, but it's not what I grew up in. There's no talking, people davening, it's quiet. What should I do? Do I go to something that I grew up with and are comfortable with? Or do I go to the place, and even though the shul is full of noise and everything that I feel inappropriate, or do I go to the other shul even though it's not what I grew up with? Okay, these are two very different questions. So let me begin. I recall reading, or at least sharing, a letter from the Rebbe, which is a letter I've seen, written to a doctor who gave the letter to me, where he was in a shul where he was sitting near someone who was speaking during davening. Being a new Baal Tshuva, this man, was very disturbed by the speaking. And he wrote to the Rebbe, what should he do? Should he yell at the person? Should he leave the shul? Those were his options. And the Rebbe wrote to him in classic Levi Yitzchak Berditchev style. The Rebbe wrote to him that when next time you see him speaking, think to yourself, imagine a Jew, even a Jew who speaks in shul, still wants to come to shul. Like limud zchus. That was the Rebbe's answer to him. So let's analyze this answer. You could say it's a personal answer to him because the Rebbe sensed, and actually this was the case, this man had a lot of anger, had a mean streak in himself, the one who was disturbed. So the Rebbe realized if he's going to go and start yelling at the guy or leaving the shul, it's not going to help. So he wanted to just show him a more refined approach. Think about the positive in the person. But the issue is, the guy's speaking in davening. It's not a good example. We know speaking in davening is not exactly something the Alter Rebbe writes, Gewalt. The Alter Rebbe spoke about it a number of times. Davening to Hashem. The Rebbe, however, did not address that issue. So clearly you see, and this I've addressed in many different episodes, there's the issue itself and there's the way we approach an issue. The issue could be a real problem, but your approach has to always be in a refined way. Because if you go with anger or you go with a negative approach, you're definitely not going to accomplish anything. And secondly, what will also happen is you're going to feed into your problem. So it becomes like this one said, the shh. He called it, and I never quite thought of it that way, but he saw it as a form of ineffective, immature revenge. Because are you really on that highest level that you have never spoken in davening? Now that doesn't mean that speaking in davening is correct, but there has to be a distinction between our approach to it and the issue itself. Because sometimes our approach, which is colored by our own attitudes, can be part of the problem as well, even if you're addressing an issue that's a real issue. And Derech Agav, I want to mention, since we're on the topic, when I spoke about criticism, someone wrote to me a very beautiful sikha from the Frierdiker Rebbe, how criticism doesn't work. So the Frierdiker Rebbe has a word that says like this. There's an expression in Kabbalah, less smola, b'hayatika. That there's no small, there's no negative, there's no left side in Atik. In Atika Kadisha, we're talking about Atik Yemen, the Pnimius HaKeser. So the Frierdiker Rebbe teaches, Atika also comes from the word movement. Lahaitik. He says hatoka. When you want to move something from somewhere to another place, you call it lahaitik. The Frierdiker Rebbe teaches, if you want to accomplish movement and change in somebody, less small. It's not possible through small. Less small b'hayatika. There's a negative gvura is not going to accomplish change in somebody else. The Rebbe said to somebody in a Yechidus who spoke to the Rebbe that there was a critical element who were criticizing the Jews, that putting on tefillin on Jews, and then they let them go on the Har HaBayis, whatever it was, something that they do something, they desecrate something while they're not telling them. So the Rebbe said, Ich hab noch in mein Leben nicht gesehen, that you could bring someone closer through sur merah, by telling them not to do something bad, to bring them closer. There may be sometimes a need to do it if you're pure intention, but to be mekar of someone, that's not. If you go over to someone in the street, the Rebbe says this in a number of sikhs, and the Rebbe says two approaches. You tell him, listen, you're not keeping Shabbos, you're not putting on tefillin, you're not doing other mitzvahs. Because of that, you're going to be punished this way, you're going to burn, whatever it may be. You tell them all the consequences of what they're doing. What impact does that have on them? Then there's another approach. You come and tell them, you're such a beautiful soul. A beautiful soul, wouldn't it be beautiful for just a soul to actualize itself through tefillin, through Shabbos, through Kashrus, and so on? And the Rebbe says, "Stell sich vor." Imagine the different impact. This first one, the person won't even want to listen to you. Who are you to tell them what to do? Especially if you're being negative. Less smaller, b'hayatika. You're not going to cause movement. You want to cause movement, You're saying the same thing, but you're saying it in a positive way. You're complimenting. You're such a special, beautiful person. Imagine if you did this, how much it would make you actualize. Like telling your child, you're so special. How much more can you accomplish? Very much a reinforcement, encouragement, instead of demoralization and the negativity that comes through criticism. So that's the attitude in general. So how do you deal with a shul where there's a lot of noise? And the noise is coming both from the speakers and the shh, and there's this battle going on between the gabbai and so on, and it could be that they're both coming from the same place. Well, look, if it's at a point where the shul is simply impossible to daven in, and you're simply, it's disturbing your own ability, and you really don't feel you can have influence on the people in the shul, then for sure, you should probably find yourself another shul. But a Chassidic approach may also be, that says maybe your shlichus. Can you find an inspiring way, not with becoming an enemy and like becoming the guy that everybody says when you walk into shul, they start laughing at you because you're the one that keeps on saying, be quiet. If you can find a way, an inspiring way, and a positive way, a creative way to change the mood by maybe speaking to some individuals, especially as people start bringing their children to shul, as an example, then maybe this is a shlichus. Sometimes it's an uphill battle, sometimes it's difficult, but that would be a Chassidic approach. Would try to find a way, since you're there already, to some way turn it around, but with some creative approach, instead of just seeming like the negative one, the critical one. Because then it does become a war. And your intentions may be good, but number one is you may just cause others to become more dug in and entrenched in their behavior. Like, criticizing them, who are you? And secondly, you probably won't impact them with that way. Because then they'll say, okay, here you don't talk down, but you do this, this, and this. And you're going to get into the spitting match. Who does more sins? So those are the two approaches I would take. If nothing really works, so you always have the option. In this case with the doctor, the Rebbe didn't tell him to leave the shul either. I think the Rebbe was basically saying that if you develop a refined attitude, you start seeing that person as a special person, you probably will end up being able to be mashpia on him, because it will come from love and higher expectations rather than just criticizing and so on. Also, there's the trap of critique in these situations where it becomes, I am holier than thou, and my critique is because I'm better than you. You definitely don't want that to come across ever. So, in the sum of things, going back to the second question, look, if it's a community you grew up in, the shul is something that you're close to your persuasions and your thinking and so on, for sure, if you can find some positive way to influence, as I said, that may be part of your shlichus. If you can't, to go daven in another shul, yeah, maybe, but I think it shouldn't just be daven for your own comfort zone. Bring Chassidic ruach in that shul that's different than where you grew up in. Encourage them. Don't just be there as a recipient because now I can go into a shul that's very quiet. That's nice. Be a Mashpia there. Find a way to have a positive hashpah. That's how I would look at it. Instead of just finding my most comfortable place where I can daven. Because at the end of the day, it's about what influence you have on people. Not just whether you find yourself your little tzaddik in pelts, a tzaddik in a fur coat that is comfortable in their situation. So, overall, let's make this clear. Davening is davening. Speaking in a shul is inappropriate. It's actually disgraceful. And there are people who have been turned off going to a shul where they see that. I understand the easy temptation. You go, it's also a social time, social hour, and it's common to do that. But I think all of us should probably think about it a little more, especially when we take our children to shul. Some people say it's better to go to shul. At least I speak. At least I go, even if I speak. It's something that needs to be addressed. Unfortunately, this has been an issue even before Gimmel Tammuz in 770. And it's something that has been a constant issue. You see the Alter Rebbe, Gewalt, the end of Tanya, where he talks about this. So clearly, even in Alter Rebbe's times, there was an issue. But we have to all be part of the solution. Excuse me. Part of the solution. I hope I didn't say anything wrong. Part of the solution, not part of the problem. And we have to higher the standards and be living examples. At the end of the day, we're the ones that either cause the problem or solve it. Because we shouldn't be outsiders and we shouldn't look at ourselves as just being stuck in a situation. And the fact of the matter is, we want to bring together the best of all worlds, the best of Chassidischkeit, warmth, and of course an environment where davening is appropriate. This goes back, of course, to Avodas hatefillah. If you were davening properly and you enjoyed, I don't mean enjoyed as a pleasure, but enjoyed and did it the right way, you'd probably be speaking less. Davening is done mostly lip service, so We don't respect it, so obviously we don't respect the environment quite the same way, and it's more like a thing we just do. So it's far easier and more conducive to do it the wrong way. So we still wanted to deal with two other topics. One was tools for mediating conflict, and the other was dealing with non-religious or non-Jewish family members. Being that time is limited, I don't believe we're going to have time to go there. I'll try to cover those topics next week. And please continue writing in your questions. I do want to conclude, however, on this note with Gimmel Tammuz, conclude with what I began, and that is that reiterating, anon nafshis ksovis yehovis, the Rebbe, the etzem of the Rebbe is in his Torah. And if you don't understand this Torah, learn it with someone that makes it personal. There's no closer way to get the Rebbe. Not only today, that's how it was 20 years ago, that was how 40 years ago, 60 years ago, forever. This is how we touch a Rebbe. Now a Rebbe touches us. Now, obviously there are directives of the Rebbe, there are stories about the Rebbe, there's inspiration. But it comes down to, is the Rebbe and his Torah. I may have told this story, but I want to share it because I think it's appropriate for Gimmel Tammuz, that when the Radatz, Rab David Tzvi Chen, who was a great chassid of the Rebbe Marash, and a chassid also lived afterwards as well, the Rebbe Rashab, Friedrich Rebbe knew him. So when news came of the Histalkus of the Rebbe Marash, in Tov Mem Gimel, Erev Sukkos, Beis is the Rebbe Marash's birthday, Erev Sukkos, Gimel Tishrei is his Histalkus. So the news didn't come to the city until Simchas Torah. Middle of Simchas Torah dancing, that's when the Radatz heard about the Histalkus of the Rebbe Marash. So he fainted. So overwhelmed by it, he fainted. His father, nobody could revive him. The only one, so they called his father, Reb Peretz. He came and whispered to him. Everything they did couldn't revive him. He whispered to him, "A Rebbe geht kein l'shtavek." The Rebbe never leaves. That's what he told him. And that revived him. A Rebbe geht kein l'shtavek. The Rebbe is a Rebbe, he's a nitzchi, he's God's messenger, doesn't leave. We could leave him, God forbid, or we can think he left us, but he didn't really leave. We have to connect, and today the test of eternity is in how we connect the Rebbe's Torah and how we live it, how we teach it, how we learn it, how we share and educate our children with it, and how we communicate with everyone else about it. We have to be living ambassadors, living, walking agents, mouthpieces, arms and legs of the Rebbe's message. Do we always live up to it? Probably not. But there's not an excuse not to live up to being those messengers. You share it with others. You could say very clearly, we're in the same boat. I was just zeiche to be able to read it, to be able to have heard it. It's not about you saying it because you're better. It's about being responsible to share. This is celebrating the Rebbe in the deepest possible way. And absolutely no shinui from now to 20 years ago. It's an inyan nitzchi, it's teira nitzchis. The Rebbe geht kem l'shtavek. So our challenge is, how do we share this Rebbe? The etzem of the Rebbe is to find the right words to explain to people why the Rebbe, why Chassidus, Torah, is important to your life. And you have to find that on the merit of the Torah itself. Not because the Rebbe is charismatic, blue-eyed, he's a leader, influenced so many people, politicians connected with him, this one connected. No, the Rebbe's message is a message for you right now, for you, your children, your relationships, dealing with challenges, dealing with difficulties. This is how we have to think. And in a small way, we have to convey this to anyone we come in contact with. Above all, you have to convey it to yourself, because when you say it to yourself and you communicate to yourself, dvarim hayetzim el halev, words that come out of the heart enter first your heart, and then nechnas ma'alev to other people's hearts. So the key is to find that type of relevance. Let's make that our challenge as we approach Gimmel Tammuz. We shouldn't need to have a Gimmel Tammuz altogether, but as we approach these days, what I'm saying is a positive thing no matter what. This is something we can say proudly to the Rebbe, this is what we did. We took your words, we took your passion, we took your shlichus, we took your message, your mission, and we shared it with everyone. We can share it in a resonating way, in a personal way, and in an applied way. This has been MyLife, Chassidus Applied, episode 20. Until next Sunday, 8 p.m., everyone should have a very connected week, a very Chassidus Applied week, a week where we use our skills and talents to convey the message of the Rebbe with everyone we meet.